One of the best movies of 2015, without question, was Creed, the seventh Rocky movie. I was so thrilled watching this. I got emotional during the film. It really touched me. Same thing with Force Awakens. Franchises from when I was a kid are back. And Cinema Blend recently did an article about the return of Creed and the possibility that Creed 2 may already be in the works. Now, I know a lot of us had originally thought that Creed 1 was just going to be like a tribute to Rocky, and it is in some ways a tribute to Rocky 1, a lot of Rocky 3 and Rocky 5 in there, but it really was like a remake of Rocky 1. Well, will there be a Rocky or a Creed, a Rocky 8, a Creed 2? We're going to talk about it here on Geekdom Movie Talk. And joining me, you know the voice, I would hope. If not, you will know the voice. Please welcome, future movie writer, screenplay, director, whatever the fuck he wants to do, Reel to Reel Productions, also known as Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Geekdom. Thanks for having me on again.
Okay. Anytime. So, you told me that Rocky 1 is your favorite movie of all time. Why?
Rocky 1 was essentially the first movie that I ever saw like on home video. When I was a kid, my dad brought home the 25-year edition or celebration of that movie in the 90s. I'm pretty sure that was in the 90s, and the DVD, all five VHSs, and I wore those things out. I absolutely love every single one of those movies. They're just my childhood staple. So Rocky's my favorite. No question about it.
Yeah, and it's just won an Academy Award. It's a great film. Now, Creed, tribute to Rocky. What were your feelings about the first Creed before we get into the second Creed?
I feel like Creed. I had my worries about it actually going into it.
Me too.
But you have to give it to Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler. Those guys, honestly, you don't see this a whole lot with like franchise filmmaking or Hollywood filmmaking at all. Those guys had a passion. They had a drive to make a really dedicated movie, not only to the franchise itself, but also, as Ryan Coogler has talked about on multiple occasions, as a tribute to his father. And it really comes across like that. I have problems with the film. I definitely have problems with the film here and there, where essentially I don't necessarily like the idea that Johnson is actually a bastard child of Apollo Creed. I feel like that kind of takes away a little bit from the Apollo that we knew from the franchise, but by no means is that a detriment to the entire franchise as a whole. So beautiful film, just absolutely beautiful. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it was just, and you could tell for sure that Ryan Coogler loved the old Rocky movies and was a student of the whole story because he followed so many of the classic motifs of the Rockies. So a couple of unanswered questions, a couple of things that were when you leave the film. And those of you watching this video who have not seen Creed yet, you definitely need to go out of your way to see it. And I'm not even kidding. It's easily top 5 movie last year, I think, especially of the big ones.
See all of them. Just see all of it. If they're not that long, you can just go ahead and watch all 7 if you haven't already. It's definitely worth the watch. Maybe skip skip 5, episode 5, whatever you want to call it, and just watch all of them. They're great.
Yeah, 4 and 5 are my least favorite. 2 is okay, but 4 and 5 is my least favorite. And definitely let us know down in the comment section what your favorite Rocky movie is. I really want to know people's opinions because it's almost always 1, 3, or 4. Like, that's always what I see. And I don't really like 4 that much. 6, I think, is underrated, Rocky Balboa.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's very underrated. So when we left the film, and again, we're going to go into some spoilers here. So if you have not seen Creed, please go see it because I don't want to ruin the movie for you because it really does have a lot of good twists and turns. Obviously, Donnie, and no, not D Free. Don Not that Donnie. At the end of the film, he goes up against Pretty Ricky, and Pretty Ricky was played by Tony Bellew. He loses the fight, just like in the first Rocky movie. He loses, but he earns the champion's respect. Champion's about to go to prison. Earlier in the film, they're promoting the Danny Stuntman Wheeler fight because he was the number 1 contender. He was supposed to be going up against Pretty Ricky, but then he ends up getting his jaw broken at a press conference, and then they do the whole story with Creed. A lot of unanswered, unfinished business here because you could essentially, with a Creed sequel, there's a few things you could do. Number 1, you could obviously continue, Donnie's rise to fame. And of course, the big difference between Ronnie and not Ronnie, Donnie, excuse me, but the difference between Donnie and his dad, Apollo Creed, where did I get Ronnie from? Donnie and Apollo Creed is that Apollo Creed was undefeated until Rocky fought him in Rocky 2, whereas Donnie
He
has
never
that,
went down.
he never went
I'm sorry.
down exactly until Rocky 1, I think it was. But he has to, his son Adonis has to climb that ladder, and then the whole movie's about kind of reclaiming your birthright and things like that. It is a beautiful movie, dude. It's just a great story, especially it's a manly movie too. I love that movie. But unfinished business. He lost, so you could go with he gets his rematch against Pretty Ricky, or you could go with the Wheeler rematch because earlier in the film he fights him in like a little sparring match and Wheeler eats him alive. You could do that. Or you could go with he fights him in 2 and then he ends up fighting Pretty Ricky in part 3 if they go so far. But I feel like if they're gonna do Donnie versus Pretty Ricky again and he wins, it's a little too much like Rocky 2 and a little too predictable. So should he lose? And what do you think?
I honestly think, just to me, like obviously we're going into Creed 2 thinking that Adonis is actually going to win and become the champion. I completely disagree with that. It's something that we've seen before. I mean, we saw Rocky Balboa not only earn everyone's respect, basically, I guess 5 times if you don't want to count Rocky 5, which is basically a street brawl and just kind of a personal issue.
No, he earned my respect there, bro. When he's like, "You want to knock him down? We try knocking me down." He got more respect from me on this one, but
so essentially, like, he earned the respect. I don't necessarily think it's time for him to earn the title. I realize that he's coming in with a whole lot more experience and probably a better boxer than Rocky was at the beginning of the series, but I just don't want to see it happen. I feel like it's way too much trying to emulate Rocky 2 in that regard. Personally, there's a lot of ways I would take this. As I was telling you before, I would definitely do basically the Tony Little Duke Burton, the guy who's playing basically Duke's son, who was Apollo's trainer.
Yeah, he runs the gym.
Who is one of the only people who actually appears in most of the films. I don't know how many people know that or notice that, but anyway, I feel like they have room there, considering that like Tony wasn't necessarily in the movie a whole lot. They have a whole lot of room there to build the relationship between Adonis and Tony up a lot, to the point where essentially maybe they're basically brothers, metaphorically, in terms of their fathers were close to a degree, and he's basically lived in the Creed household his whole life. Obviously, Little Duke Tony knows who Adonis is, and he knows his backstory to some degree. So if they were to play that, so basically Creed kind of took this angle where Rocky became kind of the surrogate father uncle figure to Adonis throughout the film. If we get to see a little bit more of his upbringing, maybe there's like some dynamic. I would really like for them to bring in basically Apollo's children. We know that he has children from the second film.
Other children, yeah. Now, would you make them good or bad? Because they might be greedy, wanting some of that Donnie money. We could see that storyline too.
I think that is exactly, like, I would really like to see that, because honestly, like, they've been living off, it looks in the first movie that they've been living off of Apollo's kind of wealth since he died. Maybe that's drying up or something, and just like maybe legal battles or something about him kind of taking advantage, reparations, or like them taking him in. He's not necessarily part of the family, although he's been adopted. Maybe that's the case. I would kind of really like
using the dad's name and all to get fame. There's a whole bunch of layers they can do there. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. And the problem with that is I would really love to see it, because obviously last time the aspect was family is really important, and like building up family, it's one of the biggest like motifs of this entire series. So building it up that like family becomes kind of an antagonizing force, not only with the like Apollo Creed's family, but also with this metaphorical brother that he has in like Tony, like Duke's son, that maybe they can build upon in the movie. And like you said before, having Andre Ward's character, Wilson? What is it?
Andre Ward, Stuntman Wheeler, you mean?
Stuntman Wheeler, yes. Having Wheeler's character actually be the main challenger for Donnie, and having all these antagonizing family forces would be a really interesting and kind of a detour from all the things that are basically Rocky, basically allowing Creed to be its own like its own story, kind of away from Rocky and evolve on its own.
Now, another thing they could do, which actually just hit me as you were talking, is if you're gonna build up the fight between Wheeler and Donnie in the movie, one of the ways they could approach it is very different than what they did in any other Rocky movie, and it would also be a way for them to do something unique and creative that hasn't been done in a Rocky movie yet, and that is if they had Donnie win the heavyweight, no, win a championship, a world championship in a different weight class. So what happens is he becomes the world champion in a different weight class in Rocky 2 in the middle of the movie, right? And I know it seems like, or Creed 2. I know it seems like it's, oh no, you want to save the big win for later, but no, hear me out. He wins the championship in a different weight class so that he won't compete. He won't have to fight with Wheeler, because the family doesn't want the struggle, but the media is wanting them to fight. The media wants to fight. So they could do this story where this guy is struggling to figure out whether or not he wants to fight because the media is like instigating the fight. You know what I mean? They could do something like that where it's the media, it's the family, and Donnie is caught in the middle with possibly a pregnant wife, which is the other story we're going to get into in a minute. And she's also has for those who don't remember, she has an illness she has an illness where she's losing her hearing. And as a result of that, she's going to end up going deaf at some point. So that's another layer of stress that you could put on this character. You know what I mean? He was already stressed out as fuck in the first movie. I kind of feel bad for him. But what do you think about that idea where he wins a title in like the light heavyweight and people want him to go move up in weight?
I absolutely love that. In fact, it kind of makes sense with what we got in Creed anyway, because there was this little dialogue between him, Rocky, and the other guys about maybe gaining a little bit more weight to actually get into a certain weight class in order to have that first amazing one-shot fight. So, yeah, like he could go down and become like a light heavyweight or whatever. I don't necessarily know all that much about boxing, but like he can become a champion in another weight class. That's an amazing idea. But getting on into that other story, see, the aspect of actually telling a story is definitely it sucks that he has so much problems going on, at least in this idea that we're trying to like come up with on the spot or something like that.
It seems like do you think it's too much heat on him?
No. I'm getting away. Like, I'm explaining this. Like, one of the things that I remember we learned in school and everything like that was, you want to tell a compelling story, then you try to give your person like a really easy goal and do nothing but throw rocks at them the whole time. So essentially like, oh, you want an apple? So go to the store. They're out of apples. Okay, climb that tree, the apple tree, and then like monkeys start throwing rocks at you or something. I don't know what it is. essentially,
you throw obstacles is what you're talking about.
Just
that makes sense.
Obstacles after obstacles after obstacles, and the whole concept of Bianca losing her hearing, especially, like I said, I love the idea of her having a baby. Because just having a wife or a mother who cannot hear her own child scream amidst everything that's going on here is just like the most hurtful, heartbreaking thing.
You want her to be pregnant and have the baby during this film, kind of like Adrian in Rocky 2. You will have that similarity, is what you're saying.
Yes, I will. I don't mind that similarity. But just having basically her have the like a physical impairment, unlike Rocky, who had the whole eye problem in Rocky 2, just kind of taking that and putting it onto her, especially with her music career and just her whole life falling apart, while Donnie's especially if this is happening when he's earning the title in the first half of the film.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah, that would be, and of course, when you have a baby, they're stressed. And they could even do the whole thing where Donnie is looking to retire and kind of become a full-time dad, but with his wife losing her hearing, they got to hire somebody to take care of the baby, and he has to, maybe they could even do the thing where he doesn't want to fight, but he has to fight. So it becomes this struggle where the media wants him to fight Wheeler. The family wants money. You could literally stack the deck on this guy. So how do you end the movie? Like, what would be the ultimate kind of victory? That he actually goes in there and he fights Wheeler, or does he not fight him, or does he resist, or like what? How would you write this? It seems like we're writing ourselves to a corner here because we don't want them to fight because it's playing into what the media wants, but it's almost as if he's gonna have to do it just to feed his own kids, and it's maybe the metaphor of the film. Maybe the metaphor should be that in life there's things we don't want to do, but we have to in order to feed our families and shit. And maybe a whole corporate America thing about how fucked up the media is, because you could tell a whole story on that, a whole story on the manipulation of fights and beefs. It's been done for years and years and years.
No, yeah, and that's the thing. And also it also plays into that whole dialogue between Donnie and Rocky in the last film where he goes, everyone in that back room, all those posters, all those people had their time in the sun. But that's just basically kind of what we're talking about, is those were advertised fights. Those were big fights that people fought and kind of passed their time. But who knows all the things that kind of went on in the background. That was part of what happened in Rocky 3, Rocky 4, Rocky 5. All this background drama that was actually bringing up these fights and people telling Rocky that he had to fight one way or the other in order to basically prove a point or help his family or do any of that stuff. I feel like they should fight. I mean, obviously it's a Rocky film. You need kind of the fight. You just can't necessarily get rid of that.
Yeah.
But like, I think he definitely can't. He just obviously he can't win. I don't necessarily want him to win. Not the fact that I don't know. Like I guess he would lose his title or something. But
wait,
he would be in
hold on. You think that Donnie should not win?
I feel like
you think Donnie should have the other belt but not win the Wheeler belt?
I feel like that would be an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Like where he has victories and he's been able to actually he'll be able to pay for his family whatever drama that comes off. And like one thing we've been building up to is like if his family is pressuring him to do the fight because they want the money or they want some kind of reparations or money from that fight because of whatever reason.
Maybe he needs money to pay the lawyers so that they don't take his money. How about that? They could do something like that.
Or that. And you know, one thing we're completely neglecting to talk about is Rocky.
I was going to ask you that last, but you want to talk about it now? Go ahead.
No, but before we get on that, I honestly, one thing you mentioned before we started talking was it would just be amazing to watch those fights, especially the last fight where Bianca definitely would show up, but she can't hear anything. So like everything's kind of going on. There's just roaring crowds roaring. You can't hear anything besides you can't hear anything besides the crowd. And then you cut to her perspective and it's just deafening.
Silence. Yeah,
it's just
you just
deafening.
see the husband getting pounded, but he gives her some kind of signal, like he raises his eyebrow or something like that, or waves to her, and then she thinks he's okay, or maybe he's not okay. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What a freaking idea, bro.
Just the entire concept of it. But yeah, I feel like he shouldn't win. I feel that happened in Rocky 2. It's too predictable. I would have him lose, but also gain the idea that he's going to be able to take care of his family. He's won this. Maybe whatever beef he had with beef we had with anybody has now been resolved. It's kind of that you lose, but you also win at life kind of concept that all the other Rockies are based on.
So before we get to Rocky, what do you think should happen with Pretty Ricky? Just leave him out this movie until the next one, if they even do another one.
Yeah,
he's in jail, so I mean, you know.
I feel like he's not really important to me, honestly. He's in jail. He's also in jail in England.
Right. Well, they could do the whole thing where they call him a paper champion because he had never beat the champ. They could do that as well. Even they did that with Tommy Morrison. So I don't know if we want to do it here. Tommy and that Machine Gun.
Yeah, Tommy Gunn.
Remember, bro, Sylvester Stallone loves to create wacky names based on puns, bro. Don't forget that.
Mason the Line Dixon.
Mason Dixon. I mean, if you watch Expendables, Toll Road, Yin Yang. It's almost borderline
Merry Christmas.
Racist.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it's like his name was like Frank Christmas or whatever.
Frank Christmas, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So what do you do with Rocky? That's really the big question.
There's been talk, especially from Sylvester Stallone himself, that says that he doesn't necessarily want to do any Rocky films anymore. He thinks that he's passed the torch and has gone over. Although he said that after Rocky Balboa, and like we talked about earlier, Coogler actually approached him with the idea for Creed before he did Fruitvale Station, and he said no. And then Sylvester Stallone actually went and saw that movie and realized this guy has a whole lot of talent, and actually sat down and realized that it was like a tribute to his father and a very beautiful film that they wanted to give him cancer, and he decided to do it. And honestly, just as a fan of the series, I don't think you can kill him off. I don't know how you
about that. Yeah,
I don't think you can kill him off. I don't know how you write him off, especially the only thing I can imagine you doing.
Maybe he goes to move with his son,
That's the thing.
right?
Maybe think he's getting old. He's getting old. He's kind of getting a little decrepit and everything, and his son comes to kind of take him back with his family, like just take him away with his family, and maybe that adds a little bit more of a. It's not as it's not as depressing as basically your wife's death, your family's mad at you, you're going up against your brother type of thing, but it would definitely be a shock and blow at the same time.
Do you think he
And
should watch
maybe
the fight on pay-per-view, or do you think he should show up at the fight, or do you think
oh
that he? Oh,
no, he needs to watch this fight on pay-per-view because and I like I told you before, we don't want to get too much into Rocky territory, but because of like scheduling conflicts, the only reason that Adrian watches the fight in Rocky 2 is because Maria Shriver couldn't actually make it to the set that day. So they had to actually write her watching it on
Maria
pay-per-view.
Shriver? You mean Talia Shire?
Yeah. My
The hell's Maria Shriver? What the fuck?
my bad.
Donnie Ronnie. No, go ahead.
No, it was like so the only reason so the only reason she couldn't watch the fight on because she wasn't there on set. So just having him would be a really nice like homage to Rocky 2 where he's watching it on pay-per-view.
Yeah, well, Stallone's not that old yet, though. You would have to put makeup on to make him older.
I mean, that's what they did. And look how bad he looks in Creed. Like they made him look like he went through chemo.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, but he's still Rocky, though. I mean, he's still tough.
He's still Rocky. But yeah, you can't kill him off. The best thing to do would just be to write him out of like literally write him out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, or maybe what they could also do...
Or Philadelphia.
What's
wrong?
Philadelphia. You're all fucked up.
What's wrong with me?
No, it's all good, but I was thinking what they could do if they do a third film. If they do a third film is, again, he doesn't die, but maybe he could be inspiring for... maybe in the third film, they could... Again, hypothetically, Creed himself might have doubts about himself, and maybe it's Rocky the one that gives him the motivational speech, and they kind of go back to the first film. You know, it would be Rocky 9, a.k.a. Creed 3, where they kind of go back to the first Creed film and say, you know, I was the one who kind of gave you the motivation, have him come back and be that character again. They could also do that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Something like that would be amazing. I really hope, fingers crossed for more Creed, more Rocky. I feel like there's just we cannot get away from these emotional, motivating storytelling. It's one of the reasons that Creed and Rocky is so successful is people want this stuff. They want to go to the movie theater and feel inspired and uplifted and everything.
Yes.
So
yeah, but I also think they can't keep it going forever either, though, honestly.
No. Three is good. I think 3 is good, a nice trilogy of these films, and then they can probably end it.
Yeah. At that point, like, just give it a rest. And I would not be in favor of a reboot for this franchise because I just like, or not a reboot, but a remake. I don't think that needs to happen. I don't think it's a good idea, honestly.
No, I'm glad they did the way they did because with Creed coming out and Creed being so successful, it really kind of takes away the idea of having to do a reboot at least for probably another decade or two.
Now,
I'm not saying it won't happen. It might happen, but
well, you just can't recast these characters. And that was kind of my other last point here about the rumor or whatever about them doing a Godfather Part 2 type movie where it's a flashback and a flash forward with the story of Apollo and the story of Donnie. But the problem is you would have to recast Apollo. And I don't know if Carl Weathers, bro, he's just way too iconic in that role, dude. It's just, that's a hard one to recast. You're gonna have people talking shit, you know?
yeah, I mean that's definitely if they ever do that, if they decide to do that, that person's going to get a lot of hate. There was a lot of rumors going around when they first introduced Creed. I don't know why, the internet just being the internet, a lot of people thought that it was going to be a reboot or
So did
a prequel.
I thought so too before I looked into it. I thought it was gonna be a prequel.
I mean, it was like in the press release they said it was going to be that, like it was going to be what it was. I don't know why there was just a lot of rumors going around. There was going to be a prequel. It was going to be the story of Apollo Creed, and I guess I can understand why people get confused, but that made me mad for a really long time. It's like, look, guys, they're not doing that. No one's trying to recast Carl Weathers, like nobody.
No, I figured that out afterward. When I first heard just the name Creed, I thought it was actually a fake thing because we have been hearing Rocky 7 rumors for years, bro. It's just,
Oh yeah.
you know, it's just how it is. It's nothing new, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let us know your thoughts down below, folks. What do you think about the possibilities of the upcoming Creed sequels if they happen. Let us know your thoughts down below, and check out Reel to Reel. All right, I got the link to his channel down below as well. Definitely want to check that out and check out his content. A lot of movie stuff coming up on your channel.
Yeah.
So
Gonna be
look
fun.
forward to that. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for checking out the video, and we'll see you next time on Geekdom Movie Talk. Bye.
Lord Freezer demands that you subscribe to this channel and follow Mr. Geekdom on these social media platforms.